Well, welcome everyone to the Balthazar NFT Gaming Podcast. We are now at episode 14, and joining us today is Lance from Koakuma. We did a report on Koakuma early in September reviewing this MMO-ARPG. So if you liked what you saw in that review, stay tuned to learn more directly from the team. Welcome everyone to the Balthazar podcast. Today we have a follow-up interview with one of the games that we just did a research report on. I'm excited about this one. Got to play out the demo a little bit. And today we have from the team Lance of Koakuma. So Lance, just kick us off here. Tell us a little bit about who you are, about the game, and what's your role within the team.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you, Luke, for having me here, for inviting me to share more about Koakuma. So thank you for inviting me. And I'm Lance. I handle the partnerships and collaborations for Koakuma. Aside from having over 6 years of experience in business development and marketing, I'm actually a gamer at heart. I've played classics like World of Warcraft, Diablo, GTA, Cabal, Fief, and more actually during my teenage years. So I can say that I think I have the experience to see this project through, and it's something that I'm definitely passionate about. So regarding Koakuma, it's actually a play and earn MMO-ARPG filled with immersive combat mechanics within a graphic intensive metaverse. So what that actually means is players will be able to actually go through an adventure in a vast world. This is called Laria. So players can actually own NFT characters, earn KKMA and BOD tokens on the Binance Smart Chain and Polygon networks. So the setting of the game is actually a medieval setting. So Laria is where players can actually explore, fight in PvE and PvP battles. So we actually have two modes, and they can craft, collect, and get rewards as they go through their adventure in the game. So the game will actually be available for PC first, and then afterwards mobile. So that's basically the overview of Koakuma. Our strengths actually lie in the immersive combat mechanics and our skill system. So this is actually, we have a skill rune combination system for people who actually prefer a competitive approach when it comes to gaming. So this actually allows players to play around with their skills, combine some runes, creating an ultimately new skill. So this will give them either an advantage in combat, not just in PvP, but in PvE as well. So I think that's also one of the advantages that we would have over others. And we also have a randomized dungeon system. So this is actually similar to Diablo. So players who are more keen on grinding, they just want to farm, collect, gather, and craft items. So they can just raid the same dungeon all over again. But in order to eliminate the boring gameplay, we use randomized dungeons so that every time they enter, it's always a new experience.
Awesome. I love to hear that. I mean, I think that there's so many people out there that have loved Diablo. I got to play a little bit. My friends were way more into it than me, but I think they really get excited by hearing, oh, it's something like Diablo. I can have that same experience that, I used to have and have the added benefit of NFTs. So I think that's pretty cool that you guys got that set up. I want to hear a little bit more about the story though of the creation of the game, because I think I remember reading, kind of went through different phases, and then you guys eventually landed on an MMO ARPG. I'm kind of curious, what was the inspiration for that gaming genre, and do you feel like you guys moved towards that because of NFTs? Does that make the most sense to have that genre with this play to earn aspect?
That's actually a good question, because this actually started back in 2020 when Koakuma just started out as a roguelike genre. So this was similar to Hades, if I would compare the game to. And during that time, Karasu and the team were actually satisfied with the output of that game. This was actually the very first demo that we had, not the recent one we released back in April. So this was more of the roguelike genre I mentioned. And the reason why Karasu decided to shift into the play and earn model was because back during that time was, the pandemic hit, and this was when gaming, really took a roller coaster when it comes to people just playing at home, mobile games most especially. So we saw that potential, and especially with Axie doing so well during that time, we decided to iterate on the game, and that's when Koakuma had the blockchain system, added to it. I think that's one of the reasons why we decided to iterate on the previous version and add blockchain into it. And then, of course, this is not to disregard traditional gamers, because the huge chunk of gamers are still Web2 gamers, right? And Web3 is a pretty new space that everyone is still figuring out, and there's still no, I would say, perfect tokenomics or the perfect game, because we've seen the rise and fall of many of play to earn games previously. I won't name some, but since we're still in the early stages, there's a lot to improve on. And basically, we just want to create something, first and foremost, people would enjoy. And then, as a result of their efforts, their hard work that they put into the game, they have the added option of actually making it sort of like an income. It can be an extra income for them. It can be a reward, you say. So this earning mechanism will depend on their goal, but they have to love the game first, right? In order for them to actually, have fun, continue even playing it, especially when the markets, are like this right now, right? We're in a crypto winter, and if the game is good, people will still play it, right? Even if the price is down, because it's fun. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that has been lacking from this play and earn space that people have been talking about. Hey, we need to actually have games that are fun, which obviously they just take more time to develop, which is why I think we haven't seen a lot of them yet. But you mentioned, right, that there is no perfect blockchain game. There is no perfect economy. This is very experimental so far. So I'm curious, is the team just that much of a believer in the NFT game space? Is this where they see all games going? Because right now, as you said, it's kind of a risk to try to take this on. It's so new for everyone, right?
Yeah. So I think if I had to answer that, there's a lot of things that come into play. And I think one of them would be, when it comes to the blockchain technology itself, I think security would be a top priority, because, every day there's always news about something getting compromised, getting hacked, funds getting stolen. So I think that's one of the things that we are working on. And the fact that we want to make it, how do I put it, more of a seamless experience for gamers. So, like, take me for example, if I have no idea about crypto and I come across Koakuma, so I need to be able to minimize as much barriers when it comes to blockchain, right? Because I have no idea about that yet. And what if I just want to play the game? So we're trying to make that experience as smooth as possible, so that if they decide to, let's say, later on learn about blockchain, we have, of course, we have educational content for that later on, like connecting MetaMask wallet. I think these are just pretty basic stuff, but the game itself can be played, like any other Web2 game. And if they decide, because there's an in-game mechanism wherein there's an in-game marketplace where they can actually trade their BOD tokens and convert it into KKMA, which can be traded in exchanges, and this is how they actually earn. So that's the only time that the blockchain, integration is present. But the rest of the game so far, it's completely Web2 experience, so it's something that everyone can actually enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's really important, right? Is that blend of Web 2 and Web 3 rather than shoving it down their throats. Hey, we're a Web 3 game, we're a Web 3 game. And they're like, what does that even mean, right? And so I love that you guys and other games are starting to think about that now. How do we actually onboard Web 2 players? And I think one of the interesting things that you guys have done is you guys have already have a playable demo out. And, I got to try it for the review. I got my butt kicked in it. There's a lot of guys that would just team up on me. I died quite a bit, but besides that, I enjoyed it, which I thought was unique because a lot of games they talk about their white paper, they talk about their NFTs, and they already do these sales before even having a game to try out, which drives me crazy. So I want to hear from you. What's the response been to this demo so far? Because I really enjoyed it. Have you seen many other people try and play it, and what has the reaction been?
Actually, I would like to thank all the people who actually participated during our initial beta release, which was back in April. The response actually has been pretty overwhelming. In a positive sense, we actually received over 1,000 players participating during that beta test. Considering we actually limited the release to just within our community and those that actually were connected with us, so that includes partners as well. So this gave us actually a lot of input. What I mean by this was we actually received a lot of feedback, suggestions from players actually testing the game out. There were bugs, of course, and suggestions to add or remove things in the game. So I think there is a lot that our community can look forward to, and including others that haven't experienced Koakuma yet, because um, right now we're actually in our INO month, and the next step to that, just to give you guys an idea, is our CBT 2 release. So our closed beta 2 release will happen around October. We don't have a set date yet, so pretty thrilling there. We will release some updates soon, so that's something that you guys can look forward to. And of course, what we're doing right now is growing the community as much as possible, and we're trying to improve when it comes to community management as well, not just the marketing, because like I said, we're receiving a lot of players coming in, and we just want to make sure that we answer all their questions. We want to make sure if there are any bugs or any problems that they experience, we answer these. And of course, we have some quizzes, we have some events. We reward those people who actually participate, just to show they're being loyal, they're showing their support, and it's something that we really put forward. We believe in our community.
So when someone tries out the demo, maybe they are listening to this podcast and they jump over to the website and try it out. How close would you say that is to the final product? Is that just a tiny little taste of what's to come? Is that, hey, this is actually pretty close? Obviously, we're going to release with more features. Where would you say the demo is going to compare to the final product?
I'd say it's very tiny. Maybe around 10-20% of the entire game. But in the next version, there will be more. I would say about an increase of another 20%. So they will experience the skill runes by then. So this is something that they can play around with, the combination of skills to create a new one, and the randomized dungeons as well. So these are two of the major things that make Koakuma stand out. I think our strengths will be present in the next beta version. So yeah, that's that's where we are at with the game.
Awesome. Well, you'll have to let us know when that releases. Excited to try that. And one of the other questions I think that we had when reviewing the game, and sometimes when Balthazar reviews it, we're just trying to go through all the public information. Sometimes we see it and have questions that maybe the team was like, well, this is actually what we meant by that. And one of the big question marks is like, how is that going to work? Is the fiefdom, the fief that's going to have be the lord over the DAO essentially. And what we saw was anyone can buy up that lord mask and become the ruler of an entire fiefdom. So kind of curious, how does that work from your perspective? How do you make sure the right ruler's in the right place with the balance of power, with good intentions, not this person that's coming in, buying up the Lord Mask and just with a plan to ruin their fiefdom? I don't know. How do you guys think about that politics?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting, the point that you're bringing up, Luke, because the fief system, actually, since we're a medieval fantasy setting, is we actually envision this mainly for guilds, and the reason why is because we also want to avoid that misuse of power, like you mentioned, right? We also want to avoid pay to win scenarios. We don't just want it to be something that those with the buying power will be able to dominate over. So we focus on creating a game that is fair, fun, enjoyable, and at the same time, since actually esports is one of the major things that we're looking at, hopefully in the later part of 2023. And that's why we're very strict when it comes to like the rules, the systems that will come into play. So going into the fief system, actually, so I mentioned about guilds. We're looking to actually place a cap or a limit for the number of guilds who can actually, I would say, guilds for the entire world of Laria. So these guilds will actually be in a piece of land. So there will be a cap. We haven't just worked out the number yet because we have to consider other aspects as well. So in each fifth, there will also be taxes as well, that the lords can impose on the residents or whoever stays in that guild. So it's in the works, and we're making sure that it's something that will be fair, since it's a system more close to like a political system, like you mentioned, right? So the balance of power is something that we're making sure that does not, is not abused. And like I said, like the pay to win is something that we just want to avoid completely. So I can't really say much detail yet because we don't have the numbers, but I think this will happen sometime around the closed beta 3 version or the open beta release. So um, yeah, we're working towards that. We've already partnered with some guilds. To mention, actually, one of the partners that we have is Infinity Force. They have experience in the guild management system. So we're hoping that with partnering with the right partners will help us in creating this system because it's tough, doing it alone.
I have two questions from that. One is first for the player. Does a player have to be a part of a fiefdom, or like if they get stuck with a bad one, can they change to find a better one? How does that system work for the player?
Yeah, so it's like Web2 games. The player actually has the decision to actually choose their own fief they want to inhibit. So and in some cases, the fief because the fief is a guild, right? And there's also we have a scholarship system. So that's something that will depend also if they are tied to a scholar contract. So it might be harder for them to actually leave the guild if it's not something that they enjoy. But I think there will be some aspect that we will work to make sure that whoever stays in a guild enjoys staying there, right? So at least they have an option of choosing as well, inhibiting other guilds as well or lad.
And then secondly, you mentioned that you're trying to potentially use this system to limit the number of guilds. And I'm curious, what is the reason behind that? Is it a worry that there's going to be too many guilds that are looking to extract value from the game? Is there just too many guilds to, balance the power? Like what's the reasoning behind limiting that number?
Yeah, because I think that's something that we're working on at the moment because it's really hard to tell because like you mentioned earlier, it's sort of like a double-edged sword. If we also have a lot of guilds, because not everyone can actually just own a Lord Mask NFT because of the price and the price before I'm not aware of the updated price was around $10,000. So this is something huge. It's a huge investment upfront. And we also select the guilds that we actually want to partner with first. So this is during the initial phase of the game because once the game starts out, we want to make sure that the guilds that actually own the Lord Mask NFT will set the standard for other guilds in the future. So, take for example, Focus Starter Gaming Guild, which is one of the guilds that we've already partnered with. They have strict standards, even in accepting games into their system. So it's something that we see that if we hire the right guild, the abuse of power won't be present. And as for the limitations we are setting to that is because the development takes a lot of time. It's a vast world as well. So I think it's a very tricky system to say, but we have the DAO. So later on, if that limit is something that we see that can be maybe we take it out completely or we actually just increase the cap maybe if we see a potential of a lot of guilds wanting to join Koakuma, then for those actually who who can vote on the DAO, they will actually have to stake a certain amount of KKMA for them to participate, and we can change these rules. And that's the great thing about the DAO system that we have for Koakuma is we involve the community, and it's not just the developers, right? Like in Web2 games, like if Blizzard says this, the players can't really have a say in it, right? So with this DAO system, we're hoping that the community can also have some good ideas. We're open to that as well, suggestions, and as early as now, we're encouraging that in our Discord because there's still a lot to develop with Koakuma.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have some good flexibility to try to pull those levers and see, that's one of the interesting things is you can have everything laid out in a white paper perfectly, but when it goes to practice, it's maybe not going the way you originally thought. And so to have some flexibility to change those things around sounds like a good plan moving ahead. So good. Thank you for explaining that and sharing that. I want to move on though, because I'm always interested, especially in these MMOs, how is PvP going to work? Because PvP in games in Web 2, if you lose some items, people can loot you. It's not a big deal. But if it's an NFT that's maybe worth, $500 or something like that, and someone kills you and takes it, that's going to be a lot bigger of a deal, right? So I'm curious, how's PvP going to work? Do you guys think there's going to be looting of NFTs? And how's that system going to happen?
So yeah, that's actually very interesting. There are some games in the Web2 space that would have that, but it would be, I think, very dangerous, I would say, to lose, right? If you have an NFT that's actually worth more than $1,000, that would be a pain to lose that. So we actually have different modes and types when it comes to PvP. We have solo matches, we have group matches, and large scale tournaments. So the large scale tournaments is more on the side of guilds. So this is what we call like a seasonal realm battle. So guilds versus other guilds. But as for losing the weapons or other players looting, I don't think that will happen in our game, um, because I think that will be highly. I think it would be highly PvP focused, and maybe in certain areas, maybe I don't know if that concept might be implemented, wherein if it's like an area that's like a safe zone, right? I think games have that. Web2 games have that. Like there's a safe zone and a PvP zone, and once they enter the PvP zone, they have to make sure that either they have something to protect them from losing their NFTs that may be implemented later. But for now, we don't have that yet. As for the tournaments, I think the main focus, especially with our esports, is to make things interesting for our gamers. So not just the modes and types, but the tournaments will also vary. There might be weekly or even monthly tournaments. We're also trying to strengthen our KOL network so that we can invite streamers over, have these types of tournaments. There might be even some tournaments like streamer versus streamer tournaments. So I think there's a lot of exciting things to do when it comes to esports. And that's, I think, one of the things that we wanted or we envisioned to see with Koakuma. So yeah, that's just an overview of it, but nothing really specific.
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned esports a lot. You've talked about it today. I've seen it in your white paper and things like that as well. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what do you guys mean by that? Because as you said, like there can be the tournament side, the event side. It's very community driven, and then there can be the hey, we have the vision and goal to be the next, League of Legends or CS:GO and have this worldwide scene. So on that spectrum, what does that mean for Koakuma to have esports and focus on that?
I think I would say it's when we're talking about esports, it's more of involving the community, like getting them actually to create something out of the game. Because like just to throw out some examples there, League of Legends, we have Dota 2, and I mean they're not even blockchain based, right? But Dota 2 is selling a lot of skins, items, even CS:GO, and it's something that involves the community. They like doing it. They play it. They make friends. So it's something that we see with Koakuma, and it's not something that you actually see a lot with MMO games. It's usually FPS games that actually get a lot of these esports tournaments, or you get MOBA games recently. Um, so I would say that when it comes to esports, it's I think the camaraderie that players actually get when they participate, and not even participate. Actually, you see tournaments like Dota 2, the audience are so involved. Like you see huge crowds, not if they're not physically present, but they're also there over the internet. They're watching for the next. They're either betting who's gonna win. So there's a lot that actually come into play, and I think in the sense for Koakuma, I think it's also an additional revenue for us, and not to just completely rely on earning through our tokens. So we get a lot of options, right? To earn from the game. So it helps create, I think, a stable economy rather than just like relying on just like one revenue income. Like if we just relied on KKMA price in the market, and what if that crashes, right? So I mean, we can still turn to esports. We can organize tournaments, and that could be also a revenue flow. So this is just how I think, right? This is as a gamer. This is how I see it, and I think that it could be applied to Koakuma as well. But yeah, there's a lot to say about esports, so I just want to share a bit on that.
They're definitely an exciting thing. They can bring in the revenue. They can bring the excitement. They can bring the community engagement.
Create merch. Yeah, I think that's also one thing, right? Like you see like tournaments like happening, and they create t-shirts, they create caps. So I think that's also an additional thing that can be done. So yeah, I just wanted to add
Yeah,
that.
no, totally. I mean, I'm a sucker for some good esport merch as well, so I definitely hear what you're saying there. I'm curious, how do you think guilds that you're bringing into this game play into the esport side of things, or does it?
I think they actually do, because I mentioned like we have some guilds already that we've onboarded, right? So the vision that we see here is that each fief or guild will actually be able to customize their own banners, their colors. So each land will actually have their own unique, I think I would say, like branding. So this is what actually sets them apart. And each guild will basically have their own communities, right? Other than the community coming from Koakuma. So I think it's gonna be a lot of diversity happening there. So that could be also an interesting thing. When it comes to the esports side, the the pool of communities that we got from different guilds will also help make things more interesting, right? Because like one guild could have a different community that's completely based in the US, while another guild might, like Japan Gaming Guild, we partnered with them. So they're, a community in Japan. So, this fact of having a lot of, cultures and people involved, I think will have an effect with, not just the guild system, but with esports as well.
Yeah, I think that's always one of the exciting things of esports, right? It's not only getting to root for a single player, but for a team. And perhaps now with Web3 is we could actually be rooting on our own guilds that we're a part of, which I think could be pretty exciting, as you said. So I'm interested
Yes,
to see
yes.
how that plays out. I want to hear next about the tokens, and we've talked a little bit about this already. There is no perfect token system. There's a lot that is everyone's still trying to learn and figure out. And we noticed for you guys are going with the two token system, which we've seen a lot of projects struggle with. How do we give both tokens value? How do they relate to one another? I just want to know from you and the team's perspective. Have you guys seen games before you go with this two token system? What have you learned from them, and maybe what's something new you want to try to implement?
A very interesting topic, actually, especially when it's tokenomics. Our governance token KKMA, this will have a fixed supply basically. So in a sense, as people hold and stake the token, it becomes, it will increase in value. So that's the vision that we have for KKMA, and this is something that, in terms of utility, will give players to get a chance to vote in the direction of the game later on. And of course, these are the rewards, for, I think, for the top players in the game in terms of PvP leaderboards. Let's say for some really difficult dungeons. So this is actually tied to effort and skill for the players. As for the BOD, or the Blood of Devil, this is more of an end-game currency. But however, this one will not be traded in exchanges. So the coin in itself is actually not as volatile compared to KKMA, but it is an inflationary token in game. So there will be some burning mechanisms happening just to keep the supply regular in check. And basically, I mentioned earlier that they can actually trade the BOD. This is already the earning mechanism part. So they have to trade a certain amount of BOD and change it into KKMA, and this is how they can actually start earning. But there will also be a daily limit. For now, we don't know what the daily limit is, but we're limiting these transactions just so that players are not just looking to earn a quick buck and just okay, I got the BOD, I cash it out, I get my KKMA, then I just move on, I earn, then I just transfer and move on to another game. So this is something that we actually see that's happening. They just want to just circulate that revenue and like just leave the project after they've earned enough. And we don't want to do that, right? Because first and foremost, we are a game that we're creating it because we want people to enjoy it. So that earning mechanism, like I said, is rewarded to those skilled enough and who actually put in the effort and time. So I think that's actually fair. So if players would want to invest in the game, they're free to do so, right? They have a choice, and that's, I think, one of the advantages of releasing our closed beta and having it freely available to everyone is to actually let people see the quality of our game. So I think that's how confident our developers are. They have a huge background, over a decade in developing games with NetEase, ByteDance, and Giant Interactive. Just dropping some of the names, the companies that they worked with before. And to add, also, we're actually talking with a gaming studio, Level 99. They actually have some experience with, I think one of them is actually an ex CTO with who's worked with Final Fantasy. So working with people who actually sold millions of copies, says something, right? So we want to make sure that we put that experience with us, and they actually can help us with game development stuff. So I think this is something that can actually help speed things up. So hopefully, with if we're right on track, we even might be able to release a more stable version of the open beta sooner. But the target is Q1 of 2023.
So I'm curious, do you think we've talked a lot about, and I've heard tons of other people say this, of, hey, these play to earn games just haven't been working because they're not fun enough. But do you think there's ever a point where games are so fun that every player will want to keep reinvesting back into the game? Or do you think there's always still going to be players that, hey, I can make some money, daily money out of this, and maybe I can even just play this full time? We've seen a lot of gamers in the Philippines and other areas like, hey, I just want to play games full time and pay my monthly bills with that, right? And so they're not reinvesting into the game as much because of that. Is that a fun problem, or is that just how it's always going to be, you think?
That's a very interesting that's a very interesting question. I think it's gonna be a mix of both. I think one, it's never gonna go away. Some people will just want to really just have fun playing the game. Others will actually enjoy it so much that they actually make it their livelihood. And I think this is not just only apparent in games, but we also see this with the rise with YouTube content creators, right? A lot of people are already starting to, I would say, it's a huge jump, leaving their jobs, and they're completely just focusing on releasing YouTube content. But again, I think the key aspect here would be quality, right? So if that person or YouTuber, if that gamer is actually producing something of quality, then I think that it will stand the test of time. Because I think no matter how good a game is, there will always be cycles, like how the seasons are. Sometimes a game might just not get enough players during this time. Just like I mean, let's take World of Warcraft, for example. I used to be a very addicted gamer. I would play like 16 hours a day. Like just this was back in the Burning Crusade. That was before the Molten WoW expansion happened, and I think there was a lot. Like you could do like 20, 30 man raids, and it was really fun. But like I'm just comparing it now, and some people grow out of the game, some still play it until now. So I think it really depends on personal preference. But sometimes it's a cycle that we can't stop. It just naturally happens. And I think one way that game developers can actually avoid this is probably to come up with much more interesting ways to make the game much more fun. Adding new systems, maybe there could be like more on the combat mechanics. So there's always something new that's happening in the industry, and I think that's something that that we can actually do, because we're a DAO system, like I said. So anyone that has good ideas can always share them, and and we'll see if it can be implemented in Koakuma. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is if it's not only fun, but there's ways to actually have a reason to spend the earnings and to reinvest in the game. It has to have a good purpose, a good utility, if you will, behind the token. And I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So to wrap up today, I want to know, one of the things that we saw in the Balthazar report was that they struggled a little bit to find who is all on the team and what's the background. So I just want to give you a chance here to tell us here on the interview, is there anything you want to speak about the team, either the experience of it, the heart behind it? Pretty much just sell us on your team. Why should we believe in the team behind Koakuma?
It's actually hard at first, I would say, because I was also kind of like, I was more on the side of actually, rather than actually showing um, you know um, cartoons on the website, I wanted to actually show more of like our real selves in it. But um, I think it's something that we're working with right now, because we've actually improved our website the second time, and we're hoping in the future, if this is something that we can do later on. But just to give you a background on Karasu, I did mention earlier that he has worked with NetEase, ByteDance, and Giant Interactive. He has over 8 years of experience actually in developing games. This includes SLGs, RPGs, and other games. So he actually acted as a lead programmer and architect during his time there. And he has some experience regarding comprehensive technology stacks and 3D action technology. So this is more on the technical side. As for our lead artist, Stephen Shu, he's actually the expert in motion and visual presentation. So they are actually a group of friends. So they have around over a decade of experience when it comes to developing games. For Stephen, he's actually the person responsible for the immersive graphics and the combat systems for Koakuma. As for our lead game designer, he's Parker's son, and Parker is actually a specialist when it comes to user psychology and economic system architecture. He too has over 10 years of experience in game design. So if you see the engaging gameplay, the vibrant system designs, that's Parker in play. So, like I said, I actually have a pretty strong belief in Karasu and his team, right? Because they have the experience. No, there's no doubt about that. I think the only challenges right now is more on the raising part and more on getting onboarding, these investors and partners who believe in our project. So hopefully they are convinced with what they see with our closed beta release, and maybe even more once we release our next beta version.
Well, and I think there's at least a saying here in America, the proof is in the pudding, right? It's, you guys have put out the demo already, you've put out some gameplay testing, and sometimes that speaks louder than what someone can write in a white paper about their team, right? Is, hey, look, we actually have something to show already. So I think that's great, and thank you for filling in a little bit more about the team. And lastly, I just want to hear from you. Anywhere people you'd point them to follow along if they want to join the community or learn more, and when can we expect to start playing this game? I think you already mentioned it earlier, but what's ahead in this next few months on the roadmap?
Sure. So right now, you guys can follow us on Twitter and our Discord. We are very keen on growing these channels, so it would be great if you guys can join it. All the details are actually there, and if you want to read more about our INO for this month, we will be having our INO with Gate, I think tomorrow. The details are in our Medium. So if you want to read, our blogs are there. So all details regarding our INO and any other updates are there in Medium. And of course, on October, we will be releasing our closed beta test 2. There is no set date yet. So any updates will be posted on Medium, on our Twitter, and of course on Discord. So you guys can follow us there. And of course, we are very open to feedback and suggestions. If you enjoy playing Koakuma or if you believe in our game, feel free to follow us. And, we're in this together. So we can't make it without you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lance, for joining me. I love that you guys are so community driven. So if you guys want to join in, go follow those spaces, and we'll continue how Koakuma does. I'm excited for what's ahead, and good luck to you and the rest of the team.
Thank you so much, Luke.
Well, thank you so much, Lance, for joining us on this podcast and taking the time to interview. I hope everyone checks out Koakuma and the links below in the description. And also check out Balthazar's resources with our launchpad and our research on our website. Thank you so much all for tuning in. If you're on our YouTube, I'll see you at one of these videos around me. And if you're on our podcast, stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you, Salamat Gracias, for tuning in.